with funding from Ascendium Education Philanthropy. My name is Mark Rembert, and I am the Director of Research and Knowledge at Corey. We are so happy to have you, have so many people joining us from across the country today. And we will be exploring and sharing an overview of our recently published report that looks at tech employment in rural America. We're excited to dig into our findings and share insights on actions that rural leaders can take to increase tech employment in their regions. Since we're going to be digging into some really, I think, interesting and innovative research, we encourage you all to share your questions in the Q&A as we go throughout the presentation. So again, please use the Q&A box to share any questions as we go, and we'll do our best to address questions at the end. So before we get into the presentation, I'd like to introduce a few people. First, I'd like to introduce Kirsten Yato, Program Officer at the Ascendium Education Philanthropy, who's going to share an overview of Ascendium's mission and work.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Mark. And thanks so much to all of you for being here this afternoon. My name is Kirsten Yato, and I'm a Program Officer at Ascendium Education Group. So just a little bit about Ascendium. We are a 501c3 nonprofit organization committed to helping people reach their education and career goals. And in addition to being a federal student loan guarantor and provider of financial wellness services, we're also a growing national philanthropy that invests in initiatives designed to increase the number of students from low-income backgrounds who complete post-secondary degrees, credentials, and workforce training programs. In 2019, we launched a new national grant-making strategy aimed at addressing the barriers that limit the socioeconomic mobility of learners from low-income backgrounds, especially first-generation students, veterans, students of color, and incarcerated adults. We also launched a focus area entirely dedicated to supporting the academic and career success of rural learners. And our decision to focus on rural learners and communities was very intentional and very much driven by the data. Despite graduating high school at similar and sometimes even higher rates than their urban and suburban peers, we know that disparities between rural students and their peers exist at every point along the post-secondary pipeline, from enrollment to workforce entry. And as I'm sure all of you know very well, these disparities contribute to a shortage of skilled, qualified workers, which affects the economic health of individuals, families, and entire communities. We know that improving rural economies increasingly depends on ensuring that learners are earning credentials that are aligned with the needs of the local labor market. And given the increasing role that tech innovation has in driving economic growth, we wanted to explore what the current tech landscape is in rural communities. We know that employment in tech jobs provides individuals with higher wages, which for learners and workers from low-income backgrounds really provides a path to upward socioeconomic mobility. But current tech employment in rural areas is limited, and through this research with Corey, we wanted to explore how we can ensure more rural learners and their communities are able to participate in and benefit from tech growth. So we are pleased to be partnering with the Center on Rural Innovation to explore these issues in more detail. And as we'll hear over the next hour, there is tremendous opportunity to expand tech economies in rural places. We know rural learners and workers are interested in tech, there is demand for their talent, and there are clear examples of ways that we can provide rural learners with the skills and supports needed to succeed in these roles. But there is a lot of work to be done to scale this work and to ensure that more rural learners and their communities are able to benefit from the economic opportunity that tech employment provides. So I want to thank Mark and the entire team at the Center on Rural Innovation for their tremendous work on this report, as well as the rural learners, workers, employers, and other partners who contributed their knowledge and experience to support this research. Thank you again for joining us today. I hope you enjoy the conversation and walk away with some key insights and lessons that can inform your work.
Thanks, Kirsten, and thanks to Ascendium for the generous support for this research. In the second half of our webinar, we'll be hosting a panel discussion with some extraordinary tech training leaders from Statesboro, Georgia, which were featured in our report. As part of that discussion, we're thrilled to have Dominique Halaby, Associate Provost of Innovation and Commercialization at Georgia Southern University and the founder of the Business Innovation Group, and Stacy Roach, the co-founder of SALT and the Chief Operating Officer of Inventure IT. The case study discussion will be facilitated by Danny Douglas, our Research and Policy Associate at Corey, and we'll look forward to hearing from all of them later. I'd like to start by sharing a little background on Corey. We're a nonprofit organization, and our mission is to advance economic prosperity in rural America through the creation of inclusive digital economy ecosystems that support scalable entrepreneurship and tech job creation. Since we're focusing on our research today, I'd like to briefly share an overview of our economic development work with rural communities. This work focuses on fostering local digital economy ecosystems by helping rural leaders and organizations within communities align resources and programs around a tech-based economic development strategy that centers technology and innovation. Our approach helps rural leaders surface overlooked assets, identify gaps, and leverage new resources to drive tech job creation. Specifically, we help rural leaders build strategies around 5 direct drivers: scalable tech entrepreneurship, access to capital, digital workforce development, access to digital jobs, and inclusive tech culture building. Our work is really driven by increasing economic equity for rural people. The Great Recession exacerbated a growing opportunity gap between urban and rural economies. At this moment in time, we are facing the largest rural opportunity gap in US history. The opportunity gap grows larger if we focus on the tech economy. Between 2014 and 2019, 96% of new tech jobs were created in metropolitan areas. And even though about 13% of the current workforce lives in rural areas, these rural areas only account for 5% of tech workers. But across both rural and urban areas, technological innovation proves to be a driver of prosperity for regional economies across the US in terms of job creation, wealth creation, and higher earnings. Computer occupations are expected to grow about 3 times faster as the national average. And tech job creation has what's called a multiplier effect, where every 1 high-tech job created results in about 3 to 5 additional jobs created by local firms. So for example, if we think about a company like Google, about 50% of their workers are in non-tech roles like sales, operations, business development, creative, project management, and others. These jobs are all made possible by the technology products developed by tech workers. At the same time, there are already signs that rural America is beginning to close the digital divide, and with it, the opportunity gap. Between 2014 and 2019, tech jobs were the 3rd fastest growing occupation in rural America. And in 2019, more than 18,000 people graduated from a rural post-secondary institution with a degree or certificate in a tech-related field. And although rural regions represent just 12% of the workforce and only 5% of the math employment, the growing inequality has significant consequences for rural places. As tax bases shrink, young people move to urban areas in search of aspirational jobs. But with the right tools and assets, small towns can participate in the innovation economy, owning and driving the means of production in today's digital marketplace. For rural workers, employment in tech jobs is a pathway to higher earnings and stronger employment prospects over time. The median earnings for tech jobs are more than double the national median earnings for all jobs. And technology's impact on earnings transcends tech occupations. Rural workers that use a greater degree of technology to perform their work earn wages that are more than double that of workers in jobs that use less technology. With all this in mind, we approach this research as part of an effort to build knowledge around how rural communities can foster local tech employment and expand high-wage employment opportunities for low-wage rural residents. What we're presenting today addresses the current state of tech employment in rural America, as well as how rural communities can increase local participation in tech training and careers to grow their local tech talent pool. 2 foundational questions motivated this work. First, what is the current state of tech employment in rural America today? And second, how can rural communities increase participation in tech training and careers? In answering these questions, we collected and analyzed data from a variety of sources. We conducted 2 surveys, including a nationally representative survey of rural adults, as well as a survey of rural employers across 9 regions. We analyzed detailed labor market data on rural tech employment patterns, and we listened to the experiences of rural tech workers, learners, employers, and training providers through nearly 60 interviews across 3 communities: Portage County, Wisconsin, Cape Girardeau County, Missouri, and Bullock County, Georgia. All of this work revealed to us that there are some common trends about tech employers, workers, and learners and training providers in rural America. And to give a preview of what we'll be going through today, first, rural employers are understaffing tech roles. Second, rural Americans have a high degree of interest in transitioning into tech careers, but many lack the confidence to pursue the training needed to make career changes. Third, rural tech workers take a variety of training paths into the field. And fourth, successful rural training providers are focused on lowering barriers for rural learners. So to start with our first theme, a very important takeaway that we learned from our work was that rural employers are understaffing tech roles. And specifically, we focus on rural employers in non-tech industries that employ a significant portion of rural residents and could be employing more. We'll dig into what all that means. But first, we want to define what we mean by a tech job. When we talk about tech jobs, we are referring to jobs in which people help to design, build, and maintain computer software and hardware systems, such as web developers, cybersecurity specialists, database administrators. These jobs exist within companies in the tech sector that develop and sell technology products and services, as well as in industries that use technologies like manufacturing or healthcare or banking or government or higher education. We refer to these industries as non-tech industries. Through our labor market data analysis, we found that non-tech industries employ at least 30% of all tech workers in rural America. Of these non-tech industries, manufacturing, government, and higher education employ the most rural tech workers. But based on national employment patterns, one would actually expect to see twice as many rural tech jobs among these industries. Our analysis revealed that rural employers in non-tech industries could be hiring over 81,000 more workers if they were hiring tech workers at the same rates as the national average for their industries. We refer to these as missing tech jobs. 3/4 of the missing tech jobs are in 2 sectors: manufacturing and government. In short, that means that if rural employers staff tech roles at the national average for their industry, then rural tech employment would be at least 30% higher than it is today. Several explanations for these trends emerged through our surveys and interviews with employers. First, that rural employers may be underinvesting in advanced technologies, leading to an underemployment in tech workers. Our survey of rural employers found that more than 75% expect their industry to be impacted by technological change that will require increased demand for tech skills. But fewer than half of rural employers have active plans in place to adopt to technological change. Rural employers identified lack of internal tech literacy and lack of local tech service providers as key barriers to adopting technology in their businesses. Another possibility that emerged, as a Midwest healthcare company explained, is that employers are simply outsourcing their tech needs outside of the local market. In either case, there is work that can be done to encourage and enable rural employers to hire more local tech talent. When we look at the types of jobs that are most often missing, they are concentrated in a handful of specific tech roles, particularly software developers, computer systems analysts, and cybersecurity and computer systems engineers. These occupations tend to pay much higher than other tech jobs and present an opportunity for significant upward career mobility. While technology maintenance and support jobs don't pay as much as software engineers, they still earn more than the median rural worker earns and often require just an associate's degree or industry certification, meaning that they are more attainable by more people across the income and education levels. And while these positions are essential, it is critical to focus on creating jobs involved in building new technologies, as these types of jobs can actually spur greater job creation in the community and offer ladders to higher paying careers. As a student in Bullock County, Georgia shared, most of the tech roles available locally were limited to maintenance of small things, as opposed to more rewarding and exciting tech work, which allows for creativity, problem solving, collaboration, and learning on the job. This provides a good segue into our second theme. That in spite of the difference between the presence of tech jobs in urban and rural areas, our nationally representative survey of rural adults showed that rural Americans are interested in tech careers. We learned people who have more awareness and exposure to tech work are more likely to act on this interest. The survey found that 59% of rural adults are interested in tech work, even though just over 1% of rural workers are in a technology occupation today. Rural adults are investing in building their digital skills. More than 1/3 reported using online resources like YouTube, self-paced courses, and online groups to develop their tech skills in the last 12 months. And more than 1/3 reported that they plan on pursuing digital skills training in the next 2 years. Yet access to tech careers has not been equitable. Rural women are just as likely to find tech careers as appealing as men, and they're just as likely to pursue tech training, but currently 3/4 of rural tech jobs are held by men. There's a good reason why so many are interested in tech careers. Tech jobs provide both tangible and intangible advantages, and rural adults currently employed in tech say they are drawn to these jobs because they like the work and because they pay well and provide good benefits. 1/3 of rural tech workers earn over $100,000 annually, whereas just 10% of rural adults employed outside of tech earn an equal amount. Many adult learners who come to the field later describe being motivated by how rewarding the tech field is due to the ability to continuously create, problem solve, and learn. Norman Wallace, who transitioned into a tech career in Bullock County, Georgia, expressed these sentiments. I was looking for something that I enjoy, but also that can be a stable source of income and kind of career path. We also learned that social capital and personal connections play a strong role in sparking interest in tech careers. For many rural tech workers, interest in their career path started from a young age. For some, a love of video games or experimenting with HTML in the early days of platforms like MySpace drew them in to want to learn more about coding. Other people had a very direct exposure to tech careers, like seeing a parent or relative working with technology. One tech student in Bullock County, Josh Vaughn, described, "I remember my grandpa wanting to build a computer and then watching him do it and it just being very fun. And while I loved technology from a very young age, I didn't start thinking about programming until I was 19 or 20. We learned that nearly half of working age adults in rural communities know of a family member or friend with a tech job, and 42% know of someone else in their local community with a tech job. This means that there's potential to foster connections that can help turn a passion for technology and problem solving into a new career. Finally, we learned that awareness of local tech employment is critical to building confidence to pursue training that would allow rural adults to attain a new tech job. Among those who are aware of a tech job in their community, 44% felt optimistic about getting a tech job locally, whereas only 15% felt confident among those who were not aware of a local tech job. This was the case for Ashley Lovett, who grew up in a small town in Missouri, where she had limited exposure to computers and no formal computer science coursework in school. She initially learned about tech as a career when a friend of hers began coding. A few years later, when she was working as a bartender, her aunt told her about the Code Labs tech training program run by a nonprofit Codify in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. The more she learned, the more she realized how well coding aligns with her natural interests in problem solving, puzzles, and being creative. She ended up completing the training program and is now employed as a tech worker. In short, the more local tech employment is visible in rural places, the more confident people feel about their ability to actually take steps to enter the field. Next, we're going to shift into what we learned about people who work in tech jobs today in rural America and how they navigated entering the tech field. Tech jobs take training, and we found that rural learners and employers benefit from having a combination of different training methods and programs to develop the skills that meet industry needs. When rural tech workers were asked how they obtained their computer and software training, 50% reported that they were self-taught, compared to 39% through a four-year university and 13% through a community college. Many took advantage of more than one of these types of training methods. Often, tech learners and workers use online resources, such as tutorials on YouTube, subscription learning platforms, blogs, and tech forums to learn new skills and acquire knowledge about new programming languages. Supporting access to these multiple methods and training pathways can be incredibly beneficial for learners and employers alike. One question that this data raises is, why is getting tech training through community college so much less common for rural workers? We refer to this type of learning as traditional training programs, and we'll dig into some of the themes that present barriers to this type of training. Traditional training programs provide students with strong foundations, but given the teaching model, are often limited in offering practical work-based skills. Students and tech workers we interviewed who had majored in or taken computer science classes in college appreciated the theoretical grounding they gained from the coursework in the classroom, but they consistently highlighted work-based learning as being critically important to acquire the practical skills and familiarity that dominate the tech field. As one student put it, many higher ed students only see snippets of software, whereas working with a company on a software development project, you see software development at scale, including the full life cycle from design to production. It's important to note that this is changing. Some programs at universities are incorporating more co-op or internship experiences into the curriculum. For example, the educational software firm Skyward opened an internship center on the campus of University of Wisconsin-Stevens Point so that students can work with Skyward managers. With strategies like this, higher ed institutions can partner with local employers to expand tech offerings in an effort to increase the local talent pool. In our research, we explored how training providers that sit outside of the traditional post-secondary structure are developing innovative and effective approaches to tech training. There are several major values that these non-traditional programs offer learners, and by proxy, tech employers. First, we learned that they focus on providing practical skills-focused instruction and work experience to complement the traditional classroom experience. At the SALT program in Statesboro, Georgia, student apprentices expand their skills as software developers through work-based learning with local companies, but also learn critical skills like agile methodologies and Scrum practices that are essential to working in the tech industry. In these types of programs, there's also a strong emphasis on learning how to learn, problem solving as part of a team. As one student in Cape Girardeau described, you're not going to be memorizing lines and lines of code. A lot of it is collaboration and figuring it out together. Rural non-traditional training programs are also very focused on ensuring that the skills they're teaching are aligned with what employers need locally. At Code Labs in Cape Girardeau, students in the part-time program are embedded for 4 weeks with local companies. One of the companies that had students embedded with them has grown roughly a third of their tech team just through the Code Labs program. Finally, coming to our last theme, we heard from both students and tech workers who went through traditional and non-traditional training programs that cost and time commitment were the largest barriers to entry when it came to tech training programs. To increase participation in these programs, training providers need to be intentional about how they can lower these barriers and get more people engaged. Nearly 50% of rural adults reported that instructional costs were the biggest barrier to pursuing tech training. While scholarships can help lower the cost of instruction, learners can still bear costs related to transportation, lost income, and childcare if they are expected to enroll in a program full-time or if classes are scheduled during the workday. These costs are particularly impactful for low-income students who may not have the financial resources to take time away from work and pay for childcare to develop new skills. Finally, lack of confidence can also be a barrier. Uncertainty about one's ability to learn new skills and transition to a new career can discourage rural workers from investing time and money in pursuing training, even when the potential to substantially increase earnings justifies the investment. Our research on non-traditional training programs exposed models that are addressing these issues and increasing accessibility. We'll hear shortly from one of these programs from Statesboro, Georgia, so I'll just touch on some of the themes briefly here. First, non-traditional trainers are designing high-quality programs that are part-time and timed to ensure that learners can continue to work while learning. Second, they are subsidizing programming to make the cost cheaper or free to participants. And finally, they are building connections between students and employers throughout the training experience to establish a clear pathway from training to local employment. Before we conclude this section of our webinar, I want to quickly review the themes from our report. We found concerning signs that rural employers are not employing their share of tech workers, and consequently, that rural people and places are missing out on the prosperity and economic opportunity that tech employment offers. Second, we learned that rural people on the whole are very interested in tech careers, and those who are most likely to actually take the steps to pursue training are aware of local opportunities and know of others in their community working in tech. Increasing the visibility of tech work can help to motivate more people to pursue training, which can lead local employers to invest more in technology as they see more available local talent. This requires a joint focus on training and increasing tech employment in rural areas. Third, we learned that tech workers take a variety of training paths into careers, including self-directed learning, employer-sponsored training, and four-year degrees. We also learned that community colleges have not historically offered a clear path into tech careers for rural workers. But we found examples of promising training programs serving rural adults that can inform better program design. And finally, to increase participation in tech training and careers, training programs need to be designed with accessibility in mind from the start. Specifically, they need to focus on ensuring that people are able to develop the skills they need to transition to tech, regardless of financial status, race, gender, or location. Maximizing participation from diverse population of rural residents is necessary for rural places to build local, sustainable, and inclusive workforces in the age of growing tech employment. So with all this in mind, we wanted to share a few ideas for actions that local leaders could take based on our findings. In our report, we provide a wide range of recommendations for different stakeholders at both the local and federal levels, but we'll give you a peek into four of them here. First, identify where there's untapped potential to grow demand for tech talent in the region. This typically begins with having conversations with employers in your community. But instead of just asking, what is your demand for tech talent today, ask, what would it take to grow your demand in the future? As our research showed, practices like outsourcing or underinvesting in technology both limit local demand for tech jobs. Understanding these behaviors and working with employers to increase demand is critical to expand access to tech employment in your area. Second, partner with industry leaders and employers to integrate work-based learning into tech training programs. Programs that provide work-based learning experiences are critical to career success. Engage employers in the design of training programs, but also consider how connections between students and employers can be built throughout the training experience to establish clear pathways from training to employment. Third, identify barriers to accessibility in your current workforce development programs. While many workers want to pursue training, many report significant barriers to building tech skills, including cost, time, and lack of confidence. Increasing participation in tech training requires designing programs that acknowledge these barriers and address them in the program design. Even if your community doesn't offer tech training today, consider the training options that are available and ask, What barriers prevent people from participating who could benefit from improving their skills? And finally, increase the visibility of the local tech community through both virtual and physical spaces. Our research revealed that nearly 60% of rural adults express interest in tech work, but the people who actually act on this interest have a greater awareness of local tech opportunities and exposure to others in the field. Local leaders need to make tech work and workers visible in the community by sponsoring tech meetups, networking, professional development events, as well as supporting the creation of co-working spaces. And with that, I'd now like to hand it over to my colleague, Danny Douglas, who will lead our panel discussion.
I'm muted, sorry about that. Thanks, Mark. As he mentioned, my name is Danny Douglas, and I am the Research and Policy Associate here at Corey. Today, we've brought together two local leaders from Bullitt County, Georgia, one of the areas that we focused heavily on in our research. Bullitt County is an area that lies about halfway between Atlanta, Georgia, and Jacksonville, Florida. The purpose of this discussion between these two passionate and dedicated folks is to provide insight into how one community is working to grow its tech talent ecosystem through innovative programming, employer engagement, and local partnerships. Our hope is that this conversation will offer you all a tangible example of how creating local training programs can be transformative, both for aspiring tech workers and for rural economies, and to give you some ideas of how to develop this type of programming in your own community. So these two local leaders have both been integral in the creation of Southern Automation, Logistics, and Technology, or SALT as it's commonly known, which in partnership with Georgia Southern University brings industry and academia together to provide apprenticeships and work-based learning experiences to college students. So I'd first like to introduce Stacy Roach, who is the co-founder of SALT's Tech Apprenticeship Program and the Chief Operating Officer of Inventure IT, which is a managed IT services and software development company. Welcome, Stacy.
Thank you, Danny.
And second, I'd like to introduce Dominique Hallaby, who is the Associate Provost for Innovation and Commercialization at Georgia Southern University. He's also the founder of Business Innovation Group, which is an incubator and co-working space in downtown Statesboro, Georgia. Welcome, Dominique.
Great, thank you, Danny. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, we're excited to have you. So to start off, can you both give us a quick overview? What is SALT, and from in your own words, and what motivated you to create it in Bullitt County? We can start off with you, Dominique.
Yeah, well, I tell you what, just to put a little bit of context maybe, and then I'll turn it over to Stacy to dive deeper into SALT. But we are an institution of higher education of about 26,000 students. We're the largest institution south of the city of Atlanta in our respective area. And we have a very robust research profile. We're Carnegie R2, which means a higher research degree of activity. The Business Innovation Group really is the culmination of our business development and economic development outreach programs. What we discovered in 2011 was that there's a lot of assets in our respective region, Savannah being the big port that it is, Hinesville, home of the largest Army installation east of the Mississippi. We have a lot of Gulfstream major players in our respective region, but not all those assets were coordinating and working together. And our rural communities were really falling behind in many respects of being able to capitalize on those. So we consolidated those business development units to form BIG. That includes our Small Business Development Center, Center for Business Analytics, Incubator, our Fabrication Lab, EDA University Center, all programs on our campus now needed a place organizationally to reside and physically to reside. We worked with the city of Statesboro to launch our first, now one of 3 locations off campus in downtown. So what we did with that process was first and foremost, extend fiber. We knew that we had to extend the broadband off of our campus to bring it down to downtown so that we had opportunities to launch businesses, help scale businesses and grow businesses in that process. Since launching that facility in 2014, we've launched 59 companies, 490 jobs in our area. Again, in this rural market, we're really proud of that. But one thing that came about was our fellow alumni, which I love that he's repping the Georgia Southern hat on here, really a conversation to be able to say, this is great to launch small businesses, but can we do more? We engaged with Stacy, and I'll let him go deeper into that story, but he was not here. He was not in Statesboro. At the time, he was in an area north of the city of Atlanta, and we saw this as an enormous opportunity for us to think differently about what type of businesses that we're cultivating, the type of jobs that we're creating, and a real opportunity for us to excite our students in exciting new career opportunities. So maybe Stacy, I'll let you jump into the weeds on SALT.
Yeah, sure. So, again, I think Dominic kind of hit it there. So, of course, I'm an alumni at Georgia Southern. So, I've got a pretty big love for my university, what they did for me as a student who came up in a rural environment, certainly family and all of that, baked into that ecosystem. And so, when I was coming up in my career as a technology person, I went to Southern. I actually went to UGA, then transferred to Southern at some point, and got into the computer science program and saw what it did for my life. Obviously, transformed my revenue opportunities, and of course, I'm an entrepreneur. So we started a company in venture IT up in Northwest Georgia around the manufacturing region that was there, and really, we're missing out on some of those opportunities that I think we saw in a lot of the bigger cities. So Dalton is one of the flooring industries kind of hubs in the space, and a ton of tech work in that, but obviously limited to what kind of reach we have in a small rural setting. So I spent a number of years working to build up an accelerator, trying to build startup competitions, really trying to bring some of that innovation in the area. And I feel like we did a really good job, but then we got introduced to kind of what Dom was doing in his world, again, through our network of, alumni in Georgia Southern. And so, just really bought into what Georgia Southern was doing, so much so that we actually opened an office in the Savannah marketplace, and really focused on how could we help facilitate some of what Georgia Southern's vision is, some of what Dom's vision is, uniquely. And then ultimately, I think we really bought in. It took a couple of university presidents before we were really sold on where we were going with this. But then, we got the right one in, and for us, we've baked what we're doing with Georgia Southern directly into our organization. And in fact, so much so that we founded an organization, SALT, really built around helping other companies realize what we were doing and how to make that happen within their organization. So, at the end of the day, it takes energy, but it takes that work ethic that I think a lot of organizations, a lot of groups, you don't realize that it's there until you find the right people who are really willing to put in the effort. But it didn't, there were no grants involved. It was not external forces that made any of this come together. It was people sitting around a table saying, here's what we should do, and here's how we're going to get there. So hopefully we can help with some of the blueprints of that, as other communities are looking to dive into the same kind of, success that we've had.
And Stacy, I'd love to hear more about the software engineering apprenticeship program that you all have at SALT. How does that program work in connecting college students and recent graduates with local employers?
Yeah, we've been extremely lucky, I would say blessed, to be in an environment where there's just a ton of need for software engineers, tech workers, and for everybody that's out there, you understand the missing pieces for recruiting, for finding talent, for finding a workforce across the board, but specifically in the engineering space, watching the revenue cost of that drive upwards, the cost of the HR side of that world to get the talent into the space, to maintain and hold on to that talent. And so, we really hit at a very oddly, lucky point in history. COVID comes along, remote opportunities become really valuable for communities that have invested in the fiber networks. Statesboro obviously is one of those. Our Northwest Georgia Dalton location, they have municipal fiber in their community as well. We were able to really facilitate a pivot that happened, relatively quickly. So we decided at some point that we felt like we had a game plan for how we could really scale software engineering to both build out technology students who had real world experience sooner than maybe they would get coming straight out of a college program or a boot camp, and fulfill a need for some of our corporate partners to help them facilitate, access to that talent in a way that was really beneficial. So we built a program that was, focused. Our first batch, I think we ended up with 6 students and 1 leader. We did what most of the organizations in the world are doing at this moment. You give your employees time to work on things that are not just necessarily the work of the day. So we set aside what we call our 20% time. We took our, sorry about that. Apologies. So I never get phone calls. So we set up a apprenticeship program where our corporate employees in the organizations that we're partnered with took 20% of their time to focus on mentorship, training, and the apprenticeship. So every employee that we have basically gives back. That is our give back program. And so we took a software engineering team, bundled in 6 software engineers with the existing professional team. They were mentored through the process. They go through a 14-week program, which ultimately gives them the credit necessary to get through, one of their requirements for their college degree. We pay them usually somewhere around, $12, $15 an hour. So they're getting paid for doing the work. We're providing them with all the equipment, all of the materials, remote software, remote management. I have facilities there in Dominique's offices. So as part of the incubation space, we give them a place to collaborate. We bring technology leaders into the space. So my team will come in and do tech topics. We'll talk about particular technology challenges or software engineering tricks and tips. But ultimately, what we've done is scaled down a software engineering team into the environment that we have within the SALT program. And we wanted to prove that out with 1 class. It went so well with the first class, we ended up opening 2 more of these and have really been broadening that and have started actually offering this to more corporate partners as we expand, which has given us some opportunities to bring more software programming out of a university setting in a rural environment for both training purposes, but then also, allowing corporate partners to get access to some of this, the resource and creativity that's involved in that.
Yeah, and I think that really connects to something that Dom, you mentioned earlier about being really engaged with partners in the region and in Statesboro. And so I'm curious if you can speak more to what do you see as SALT's role in the Statesboro tech employment ecosystem and also in the broader ecosystem of rural places in Bullitt County?
Well, for me, I make no bones about it, not to put any pressure on Stacy, but for some of the things that we're doing, if we think about the future of scalable type businesses, technology related businesses, we see the work that Stacy's doing in SALT as really being that platform for new business opportunities to launch. So not just about some of the things that they're doing in terms of assisting the tech workers gaining the skills that they want, but we're in a market where we have a huge amount of logistics opportunities, right? I mean, there's warehouses in nauseam because of the port up and down. What we have is I-16 and I-95, and each of these rural communities have a lot of warehouses. But where's the technology that drives the logistics industry? What about RFID? What about the coding? What about ways to be more efficient? I don't really need a lot of warehouse spaces that employ lower wage workers and not even that many at that. What I need is people like Stacy to be able to assist in getting those companies to think about efficiency, thinking about how they can operate more successfully. And it's not just in logistics, right? Even though SALT has logistics in the name, but they're doing amazing things with healthcare as well. So some phenomenal work in being able to improve the efficiencies of medical offices. So I think from where we stand, this is the seed of new entrepreneurial opportunities that can really take hold in our region and start to transform those type of opportunities that are for our students. They're going to learn the software, they're going to learn the system, they're going to launch businesses, and then they're going to end up hiring that next generation of workers to work on those type of businesses that could be ultimately transformative of various industries, right? Logistics, healthcare, you name it. So we're all in on Stacy. I mean, one of the things that I see from our perspective that universities sometimes do a really bad job of is getting in the way of private sector. So when Stacy and I were, discussing, and I remember so clearly just in our space there, and he's bringing the doctors, into the space and having conversations on somewhat of a recruiting mission for one of the doctors, daughters, really started to say, wow, they're doing something that we need to figure out a way to help fuel, help facilitate, help make happen, not get in the way of. But how do we contribute to that? And I think that's important for a lot of other organizations to realize. We need to be enablers, accelerants of great ideas, accelerants of opportunities, and not organizations that are overly bureaucratic and stifle some of that growth. It's still challenging, quite honestly. I know Stacy, I appreciate his patience too. We're not moving as fast on our campus as he and I both would like, but we're going to keep at it, and he's going to continue to do amazing things. I have no doubt of it.
And I think this question can go for either of you, but you have this unique system where you have a really close partnership between a training provider like SALT and the university. So what do you see as the value of having that connection between a tech training program and a university?
So I'll go on that. Just, so for us, obviously there's challenges to being able to facilitate something like this when you're working with a university, students and working within the university setting, young students especially, trying to get them, acclimated to the workforce, acclimated to, their calendaring, their, what their availability is, plus also balancing schoolwork and all of those things. So, I think for us, having a partner like Georgia Southern has helped us facilitate, a lot of that experience that they have in trying to, manage, class loads and so on and so forth. It's super important for us. In our other communities, we're working with more of the, technical school settings. And so, the level of students that we're getting through that platform is certainly a different, workflow. We definitely have more of the, less full-time students as opposed to their, working a full-time job and going to school. And so, the pairing up of the academic institution who is carrying a lot of the academic need of training versus the real world situation. Computer science is specifically a challenge, obviously, because technology changes. So what universities teach is really from fundamentally how to learn in the technology world. So, they're still teaching. We've got some classwork that's in some of our universities are still teaching COBOL as a programming language. I think Georgia Southern's leveraging Java as kind of their infrastructure, which is, most universities. But if you look at what the actual usage of technology is today, COBOL and Java are not, your top languages. And in fact, if I were to teach something in Dom's university, it would be outdated by the time we got it implemented. There's just so much change. And because of that consistent change, I think being connected with a teaching partner, I think is super important because there's always additional things that need to be fundamentally learned as a group. I don't know how you feel about that, Dom, but.
Oh, I think you're spot on. I think many of the challenges that we have as an educational institution, right? It is about getting students to learn. It's about getting them to learn subject matter and really prove that they're trainable. But by working with that much more applied nature of what SALT is doing, we're getting them working on very specific projects. They're starting to gain experience. They're no longer relying solely on what their transcript says or the fact that they did earn a degree. They have actual projects they can point to. So of course, this also works out really well for venture IT, right? So as people go through that program, they already are familiar with the students that they've made an investment in, and when the opportunity presents them, they can hire them, and there's no learning curve, right? I mean, you're really plug and play into the Inventure IT process. But for those that they don't hire, you still created an opportunity to have an enormous amount of understanding of how the computer science industry operates. What is the currency of the different platforms? How to be able to develop code, write code in a way that can solve problems, which is in essence what it is. And Stacy does a remarkable job, and his team also in working with industry. I think you'll bring students into industry meetings when they talk about problems they're trying to solve. So the students are really being able to catch it from both ends. So that's important to us because, again, if the students are really good, even if Stacy doesn't hire them, or even not right away, they've learned enough that they may be the ones launching these new businesses. They may be the ones creating new opportunities that we haven't even calculated for at this point. So that marriage of academic and industry, I think, is extremely important and something that our university highly values.
I feel like we could continue this conversation for quite a while because you have all these interesting pieces that you're working with. But unfortunately, we just have a few minutes left. So I'd like to thank you both for being part of such an interesting and informative conversation. Our objective here was to offer everyone some on-the-ground perspective for how rural communities are working to develop local tech talent ecosystems. And throughout this discussion, you all heard all about the story of SALT in Bullitt County, Georgia, and how tech apprenticeships can support aspiring tech workers to enter the local workforce. And we just want to note that the university collaboration that SALT has that's made it so successful is just one example of how a tech training program can be designed. And we recognize that not every community has such close ties to university. So we encourage you to check out our full report for more examples from other parts of the countries that use their own strategies to fit their specific context if they don't have a local large university present. And with that, I'd like to turn it back over to Mark for Q&A.
All right. Well, thanks, Dominic and Stacy. That was a wonderful conversation. Really appreciate you sharing your insights with us today. So thank you all for putting some questions in the Q&A box. I'm going to try to address a couple of them. So first, there were kind of two that were related. Typically, who or what organization is the catalyst for a rural tech training program? And related to that, what types of partnerships are needed to build out a program? So for the first one, like who is a catalyst? In our experience, it's hard to pin down a specific person or individual. I think we see in different communities, it's a different catalyst. And I think in some ways, even the conversation we just heard, I think Stacy, you touched on this a little bit, that it almost is an entrepreneurial activity, right? In many cases, you're trying to identify a certain problem, a need, figure out a solution that meets that need or problem. And it's a bit of a multi-sided problem, right? You have employers who need trained workforce, you need people who are interested in getting careers and need training programs that align with their needs and address some of those barriers that we just discussed. So it is an entrepreneurial activity. And I think where we see these programs most successful, it's where somebody who is entrepreneurial, they may not be an entrepreneur in the sort of traditional sense of someone who starts a business, but someone who has the entrepreneurial qualities or entrepreneurial mindset for how to go about really honing in on a problem, developing solutions, iterating, creating innovative models that really work. So I think the first place I would look for is like, who are those people in your community? Who's that kind of catalyst who has that entrepreneurial mindset that can figure out how to put these pieces together? When related to that are the partnerships that are needed. And again, I think we've heard today, from the conversation about Statesboro, some examples. So clearly employers need to be partners in developing these programs, but also higher ed institutions like Georgia Southern University or community college or career technical school. Often workforce development organizations are critical partners. But there could be other sort of unconventional partners, right? So a co-working space could be a critical partner, providing space, providing a venue for networking and community building around tech. There could be partners that could help with recruitment. So when we think about especially addressing issues of equity and how do we bring in people to create training programs that may feel like they're not accessible to them. Looking for partners like churches or community organizations, United Ways, people who are engaged with the community in different ways than tech training, but can be really critical partners for reaching out, finding potential candidates. So I'll give you an example from Cape Girardeau, Missouri, the Code Labs program that we talked about. They recently started recruiting people for their program at the local farmers market and actually have been able to really diversify their participants by going to kind of an unconventional location for them, the farmers market, to engage the community, talk to them about tech opportunities, and get them interested in the program. So you could go on and on and on. But I think the key partners, if I were to start, if I would recommend where to start, it would be employers, post-secondary institutions, workforce development, and then other key partners like co-working spaces that may be sort of part of the tech community. And tech workers themselves, I would also think that they would be some great partners to bring to the table to offer advice on the types of programming and training that would be really helpful. We had a question about developing curriculum. This one is a little bit tricky because I think it varies. It really depends on the need. But something that I think we've seen is that there is now an incredible amount of curriculum that is available online. And I think we even talked about that a lot of tech workers actually are turning to online curriculum already on YouTube, on places like Free Code Camp or the Odin Project or other platforms that provide access to free tech training curriculum that people can leverage to build their skills. So thinking about a program, you could, if you were getting started, you could think about are there programs out there that we could leverage and build around. So, not just say to somebody, here's a link, go do this program, but creating a cohort of people who are interested in doing it together, creating programming to engage them and support them through the learning process, bringing in mentors who are existing tech workers in the community. So there are ways that you can build the local programming that really focus on supporting learning and supporting the learner as they go through a process of actually leveraging a web-based curriculum that is accessible to anybody today, but really embedding that in a local context. I would say that would be a good solution if you don't have the local expertise or resources to develop curriculum on your own. There was also a question about federal funds or grants to help build traction. There are programs that you could look to. The Economic Development Administration, the Department of Labor, the USDA all have programs that are focused on training people in rural areas on future-focused skills and for future-focused occupations. So I would look at all three of those agencies and look at their programs to see what might align with what your goals are related to building a tech talent training system in your own community. So again, thank you all so much for joining us today. This is a really exciting topic, and we're excited to share our learnings with you and some of the case studies from Statesboro, from Cape Girardeau, and from Portage County, Wisconsin that are in our report. So with that, I will plug the report itself. We just gave you a taste today of all that we learned, the examples, the models that we think provide really promising examples of what tech talent training can look like. So, if you want to learn more, please go to our website. You can find the report there. And please sign up for our newsletter. We're continuing to work on producing research related to building tech economies and scalable tech companies in rural America. And we love that you're part of this conversation with us. So we hope you'll join us for future events. Go to our website, download the report, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you for joining us.